It's always super exciting when there is a new graffiti mop or graffiti marker released to the market, and even more so when it is one that has been developed by a well-established graffiti brand of sorts. And that is exactly the case for the new Dang Flex Mops, the Flex 15 mops that have just been released to the graffiti world by BombingScience.com. If you're watching this soon after the Dang Flex Mops release, there definitely are still some questions about the quality of these Dang Flex Mops. So that is exactly what we are here to examine today in a full review and surface tagging test. Today, I'll be telling you everything that there is to know about the Dang Flex 15 mops, and I'll even be giving you a first-hand look at the process that the Bombing Science team went through to make a best-in-class 2-ounce mop by giving you guys a look at a short interview I did with the infamous Fred down at BombingScience.com. And at the end, after our surface tagging test, where we actually put these to the test, throw some tags up, I'll be able to tell you guys, in my opinion, if these ultimately are a buy or not. So if that sounds good, let's get to it. Now, although Bombing Science is a very well-established brand in the graffiti world, it wasn't until relatively recently that they themselves started producing their own lines of graffiti products. This mop, the Flex 15 Dang Mop, is the first mop that Bombing Science themselves have actually created. So if you are watching this a good length after these mops have been released, then that at least says something about how the Dang Flex Mops have been able to stay relevant over a long period of time. But as of right now, we don't know that yet. And either way, today we're gonna find out exactly what the Dang Flex Mop is all about in our surface tagging test, as we get to know what they write like, how they feel, how squeezable the graffiti mop itself is, what the nib is like, and what the paint formula is like as well. So if you want to see and know everything there is to see and know about the Flex Mops, that's what we're doing right now.
Perfect.
So these Dang Flex 15 mops are, at least on the surface, everything you could want in a mop. They hold 60 milliliters or roughly 2 ounces of alcohol-based Flex 15 paint. And Bombing Science emphasizes on their site that the formula is highly permanent and highly opaque. The physical mop itself is that really nice 2-ounce mop shape that I personally really like. They're obviously very similar to the Crank K60 2-ounce mops. If you want more information on the K60, check the cards in the corner. And they feel about as squeezable as well, but our tagging test is really where we will test that out. There is a mixing ball in all 13 of the Flex 15 mop colors, as well as the gold and the silver colors that they come in. And there is a very standard 10 mil nib on these mops as well. It's a cotton nib, similar to a lot of the graffiti mops on the market. And as you can see, they have really stuck with that sort of retro labeling that they did with the Dang low pressure cans as well. The mops themselves will cost you, at time of recording, at least $7.99 US or $9.19 in Canadian. So they're definitely far more affordable than a lot of brands of mops out there, and they could have a lot of value if they do end up performing well today in our tagging test. But I was actually able to talk to Bombing Science and get some inside information from Fred down at Bombing Science about just how these Dang Flex Mops came into being and the process that they went through to develop a best-in-class 2-ounce graffiti squeeze mop. So I'll share with you right now exactly what Fred had to say about the Dang mops, and then we'll head over to our testing area. So I have right here exactly what Fred from Bombing Science told me about these new Dang Flex Mops. I asked him a few questions and he gave some pretty detailed responses, so I'll let you in on exactly what he said right here. The first thing I asked him was, is there anything about the development process that people might want to know about how the mops have been tested out and made? His response was, we focused on the durability of the mop components. So I'm guessing he's talking about, the mop squeezability itself, as well as, of course, the nib durability. That's the part of a mop that you really do want to be the most durable. And he says they also focused on the opacity and the quality of the paint, which is great to hear because nobody wants to write with something that brings back those nightmares of trying to write with those Markwell markers or something like that, right? He goes on to say the paint has to be super opaque and colorful yet drippy, which I think most of the people looking to buy a graffiti mop would most certainly agree with. Maybe let me know in the comments, is that your sort of main things you're looking for in a paint? What are the things you like best in a mop? Let me know in the comments. When I asked him specifically about their main focus when figuring out how to create a mop like this, he said the main focus was releasing a really high quality mop. They did have it made in the US, he mentioned, and he wanted to provide this at a good price point. He says if you compare, it's basically 50% less expensive than similar mops on the market. This is what Dang is all about for the paint and the marker products. We want writers to paint more, but not with cheap quality tools. So they really are trying to put their heart and soul into these and get more high quality tools into writers' hands, I believe. And lastly, what I asked him was, is there anything specific you want people to know about the Flex Mops? He said it's refillable and really robust. It's made in the USA and we pay really close attention to the quality. The price is lower, but the quality is on par or better than what currently is available. We are just stepping the game up, and I think that is a great final statement there that he had to finish off. So after that, I'm even more excited to start trying these Dang Flex Mops out, so let's get to that right now. Welcome back to our testing area, everyone. If this is your first time joining us, where all the magic happens, an extra welcome to you. We have, I believe, 73 other graffiti product reviews on the channel that you can check out, and we got much more. So, the Dang Flex Mops. Because of what Fred told us at Bombing Science about these Dang Flex Mops, we're going to be testing this out on a nice, smooth surface, one of the nicest that you'd want to write on with a mop, and we're going to be looking at some specific elements of these mops that really need to be tested the most. Since they focused on some stuff specifically, according to Fred, we're going to be paying attention to 3 things in particular with regards to the paint formula. Number 1, of course, the opacity, especially with the gold and silver. Sometimes those colors can have a little funky opacity. Number 2, the color vibrancy, especially because we have 4 different colors we're going to try out here today that Bombing Science sent over. And number 3, what we like to call here on the channel the drippability, of course, which was also sort of referenced by Fred, which really just means the viscosity. Of course, we just like to dress words up here because we're fun people or something, I don't know. With regards to the physical mop here, I'm going to do my best to communicate to you guys the level of control that I feel I have with the mop compared to some other mops, meaning how squeezable is this mop, and of course we'll be taking just a brief look at the nib. How well is the nib holding up? Is it something that's gonna hold up well if you use it properly, is really what we're looking at. And at the end, after all of that, I will be able to tell you guys if these Dang Flex Mops really are a buy or if they're one to skip out on. And I'll be able to tell you, hopefully right down to a personal level, if there's something you would be interested in buying or not. So without further ado, let's tag some subscribers' names up who have asked me for hit-offs in a video and see what the Flex Mop is all about. So we got a few colors to test out today. I'm going to do something a little funky. Start with the gold today. Just look at these drips already. I'm loving this. You can tell already without a whole lot of squeeze you can get a hell of a lot of drips. So this Dang Flex Mop paint formula, I'll sort of tell you about each color that I tried here, and then I'll tell you about some of the overall sort of stats of it, I guess you could call them. Would you look at that? And of course, starting with the gold here, I was really hesitant about how the metallic colors were going to hold up. And to my delight, I guess, the gold held up fairly well. At first, I thought it was just the surface being a little bit iffy, but I think just there's a bit of consistency issues possibly there, because it's one thing when you get some incomplete lines like this that are streaky in the middle and have hard edges, but it's something totally different when you're getting the tops or the outside of the lines that are almost spreading a little bit. The reasoning for that, I could be wrong here, discuss away in the comments, but I believe that when that happens, and you'll see it much more clearly with the silver, but when that does happen, there is some sort of possibly an issue with the binder a little bit in the paint, but I'm not certain about that, so I don't want to say definitively that's what's going on there. I've used a few different golds from different companies and mops, and this is among, you know, I'd say the top half as far as the color goes and the opacity. Moving on to the red though, right away I do have to say this is when I really sort of felt like, whoa, this is a mop that has some real value to it, because that red is such a vibrant red. And not only is it a very beautiful vibrant red, it's also incredibly drippy. This is the kind of formula that when you combine a nice vibrant color like that with some really nice drips, that really gets a lot of people, and I think a lot of people really enjoy that type of tagging with this type of paint formula. Being that that is one of the things Fred specifically mentioned at Bombing Science that they worked on, well, two of the things, the vibrancy and the drippability, I will say again, that shows that they really did put a good amount of effort into ensuring the quality of their product here, and I think they are well on their way to developing a very good mop here. That is a bleed through ink, so don't worry about what's happening there. That does not say anything about the quality of this paint. That is a very heavy bleed through ink. The silver, to be honest, I was not impressed with the silver. Even the color, it's a little more of a gray silver. That alone is fine, like there's different silvers. But just to me, you really saw it. I did it on a nice clean part of this surface, and the drips really give it away. For me, you're getting those drips, you're getting sort of the bleeding from the edges of those drips. They're not the nice three-dimensional ones, and that's why I mention this stuff all the time, because that three-dimensionality and sort of the stick-to-itness of a formula shows that the formula is well put together and it can stick to a surface. The silver I just think needs a bit of work. That's the best way I can put it, I think. I would have expected the gold and silver to act much more similar to each other than they did, but the first thing I thought about the green is that, wow, this again is a very, very vibrant color. As far as the opacity goes, don't worry about any of the blue dye ink that you're seeing bleed through it. That is just the nature of that blue dye ink. You can check that video out about that ink in the corner where the cards are. But yeah, the green itself is incredibly vibrant, and these colors are very vibrant. They have a lot of value to them. The consistency of those non-metallic colors I'm really enjoying so far. A bit more general talk now, just about the mop. One thing I was hoping for was that it would just sort of be one of those mops that fits in your hand and sort of collapses into the shape of your hand when you write with it. And you can see, I think it was on the green mop, that did definitely happen, and it didn't really re-inflate with air a little bit. So I enjoy the type of nibs that give you a bit closer to a vacuum sort of seal, for lack of a better term, on your mops. And one thing about nibs that do that, those nibs usually contain a thicker weave of cotton or whatever they are made of, and that bodes well usually for the nibs, durability specifically. And with these nibs as well, one thing you'll notice on a bad nib is that the nib, right away when it gets wet, it'll just sink down and flatten out, whereas these ones are not doing that at all. So although we aren't testing this on anything close to a rough surface, it is important to remember that there is more than one way to tell how good your nib is, and I at first glance would think that if you're using this nib properly, it looks like it's going to hold up quite well. So we've definitely done quite a bit with these mops now. We've got a good idea of several aspects of the paint formula, as well as the physical mops themselves. That being the case, I do have a couple important things that I do really want to say about these mops themselves, and how to specifically tell for yourself if these are a type of mop that you'd actually want to use for your individual case. So stick around and I will tell you exactly that, as well as if ultimately I think these are a buy or a mop to avoid. Okay, so how do you know if this mop is going to be one that you'll actually like? Because paint formulas are very different, characteristics of them and traits of them are all very different. Well, I actually crunched quite a few numbers here for you to give you an exact answer for if this is a mop that you should be buying or not. I have some qualitative ways, which I'll tell you right now as well. And the main one that I can think of to say, well, this might not be for you, is just if you're the type of person that just loves a thick formula that's closer to like some of the grog paint formulas like the full metal, or if you really sort of like the thicker crink formulas, then this might not be for you. But that's if you just have your heart set on just having a nice thick formula. Things that this formula has going for it, it's very drippy. The colors are vibrant. I actually tested out myself just right now. This was done with a Crink K60 and you can't really pick out much difference at all in terms of the color values there, or the vibrancy at least. So, you know, it is right up there with some of the top brands in terms of vibrancy specifically. Opacity, nothing to be concerned about there. There's no technical formulaic reasons why anyone should not want to buy this formula, other than the silver, I would say, tentatively, and possibly the gold. But I'm not really telling you who this mop is actually for. Well, it's for two kinds of people in particular. Number one, those of you who are the drip heads, you're gonna love it, I promise you that. The second type of graffiti writer or artist who is going to like this is sort of the money-conscious writers out there. A lot of the more money-conscious writers, you have to understand, are doing a lot of tags, like a high volume of tags, using up a lot of paint. They can really benefit from saving $1 here and there when they buy refills or mops, because of it's such a high quantity that they buy. And just to make you consider buying this mop, if you are in one of those two categories, here's the numbers I crunched for you, and I'll put a nice chart on screen or something to that effect that shows this. But Fred did say that these were 50% cheaper than a lot of the competition. I'm sure they have their numbers, but here's what I ran. The Dang mops in USD are roughly $8. I found the mops of each of the major brands that Sciz also sells that have about the same amount of paint and are close to the same style of mop, and compared their prices. For example, the Crink K60 here, almost an identical mop, you're gonna pay roughly $16 for it, which is twice as much. So it's 100% cheaper than a Crink mop here. Your second one we compared it to here, the Molotov Dripstick 860 DS, almost the same amount of paint, similar mop. You're gonna be out about $13 US for that, which makes the Dang mops roughly 40% cheaper than a Molotov mop. Next, the OTR 004 was the one that held about the same amount of paint and has a nib size close to the same as this. That one you'll save about 20% buying the Dang instead. The Grog 10 FMP is the closest to this, I would say, and the Grog will be about the same price as one of these Dang Flex mops. So really, it has an edge on just about every mop of the major brands, that is, on the graffiti market, and I would definitely say these are a buy in my book as an overall statement. But if any of you guys have tried this mop out, please leave your comments below and let everyone else know your experiences. Do you have friends that have tried it? Are you looking to try it? The more knowledge we can share together in the comments, the better off we all are. If you do want to know more of the backstory about how I got to review these and a bit more about what is to come on the channel still, I'd recommend checking out the video on screen right now. It'll tell you a bit about the future of what's going on in the near future, that is, on the channel. I hope to see you over there very soon. Something else you might want to check out are the Tags, Throws, and Pieces tees and sweaters. I have first link in the description for those. So I hope to see you in that video very soon. Until my next one, peace.